First off, let's be clear. Reservoir Dogs isn't really about the heist itself. It's about how the mere idea of that robbery casts a shadow over everything that happens in that warehouse. Every suspicious glance, every betrayal, every drop of blood. When Tarantino chose to skip showing us the heist, he wasn't just being clever. He was making a calculated move that cranks up the tension to 11. Think about it. By keeping the heist off screen, Tarantino turns us into detectives, forcing us to question every single story we hear. Take Michael Madsen's character, Mr. Blonde. In that opening diner scene, he's coolly discussing Madonna songs, showing this oddly detached, almost playful side. But later, when Mr. White swears up and down that Blonde went crazy during the heist, well, Blonde's true nature becomes brutally clear during the cop torture scene. The contrast between his initial charm and later sadism is made more striking by never seeing his actions during the heist itself. The whole film revolves around figuring out who the rat is, and not showing the heist makes everyone's motivation more complex. Steve Buscemi's Mr. Pink demonstrates his professionalism by being the first to voice what everyone's thinking, that someone must have tipped off the cops. Harvey Keitel's Mr. White shows his true character through his constant loyalty to Mr. Orange, caring for him even at the risk of his own safety. Even Joe Cabot's tough guy boss act starts to feel more layered. The warehouse becomes a testing ground where everyone's true nature comes to light. The flashbacks aren't just filling in backstory, they're pieces of evidence we need to examine. Watch Tim Roth as Mr. Orange practicing his commode story in the mirror, sweating through every lie. But notice how we never see him during the actual heist. Instead, we just get these intense flashes of him bleeding and running away. We have to piece together his betrayal ourselves, just like the crew is trying to do. Even that touching flashback showing Mr. Blonde's friendship with nice guy Eddie hits different when you contrast it with his later violence. If we'd seen the heist, these layers would have been flattened. Instead, they make us keep asking, who are these guys really? The dialogue isn't just smart, it's loaded with hidden meanings. When Mr. White says he's going to die because of this kid, it hits different because we know Mr. Orange is the rat. But White doesn't. Every single line could be a clue or a red herring. Even that opening argument about tipping waitresses isn't just cool dialogue. It shows us who these guys really are. Mr. Pink refuses to tip because society says I gotta. Tells us everything about how he'll try to save his own skin later. Tarantino actually compared this movie to a novel where some huge unseen event drives everything forward. Kind of like in Glengarry Glen Ross, which definitely influenced him. He's more interested in how the heist affects everyone than the heist itself. The robbery isn't missing. It's like a ghost that won't leave these guys alone. Okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Yes, Reservoir Dogs was made on a tiny budget. Filming a big, messy heist would have meant more locations, props, extras, stuff Tarantino couldn't afford. But here's the thing. He straight up said even with unlimited money, he still wouldn't have shown the robbery. The limited budget just forced him to lean harder into what he does best. Killer dialogue, claustrophobic tension, and characters that feel absolutely real. That warehouse isn't just a cheap solution. It's a pressure cooker where everything boils over. By hiding the heist, Tarantino makes us work for it. We're not just watching, we're trying to solve this thing alongside the characters. When Mr. Orange finally admits he's the rat, it destroys us not because it's surprising, but because we've spent the whole movie getting to know him. It's not just a plot twist, it's watching someone we care about reveal their true colors. Even the way the movie jumps around in time matters. Those flashbacks, Orange rehearsing his story, Blonde hanging out with Eddie, they're perfectly placed to match how the tension builds in the warehouse. When Blonde is torturing that cop, we're not just seeing violence. We're seeing what happens after a heist we can only imagine, which somehow makes it even more intense. 30 years later, people are still arguing about what really went down in Reservoir Dogs. And that's exactly what Tarantino wanted. He didn't skip the heist just to save money. He did it to show us that crime movies could be something different. By focusing on what happens after, he turned this into a psychological experiment where our imagination does all the heavy lifting. The robbery isn't on screen because it's living in our heads, in our theories, our doubts, and our desperate need to figure out the truth. So next time somebody asks you why they didn't show the heist, tell them the truth, because the heist is the least interesting part of the story. The real crime? All the lies these guys just tell to stay alive.